Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. Awesome to see people from all over the place checking in. That's amazing. Okay, cool. I'm seeing a ton of people trickling in from all over the place. I'm seeing a ton of hands raised. Super excited to get started. So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, I'm Emily and I'm an organizer with Working Washington. I know that I have talked to a lot of you in some way. I've emailed you or Facebook messaged you or texted you. And I'm just super excited to be able to get together with you tonight and figure out what our next steps are here. So like I said, I've been, talking to a lot of you over the last month or so. I've been organizing alongside Instacart workers. And this is going to be a really great chance for us to figure out what we do next after winning like a pretty significant concession from Instacart, but still needing a real path forward to real change. So tonight you're going to hear from some of our leaders in this campaign on video. And we also really want to make sure that you guys have a chance to talk to each other and to us. So I would love for you guys to participate in the chat. And if you didn't hear me say it before, you can start by introducing yourself in the chat. I would love to hear from everyone, your name, where you're from, and if you feel like sharing it, what do you want to see change the most here? What's the most important thing to you? So let's go ahead and kick things off by having our executive director, Rachel Lauder, talk a little bit about Working Washington and about how we got involved in this fight.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm the executive director of Working Washington. We're a statewide workers' rights organization that organizes with and advocates for workers across many industries in Washington with the goal of improving conditions and pay for low-wage workers and fighting income inequality. And we get it done. Fast food workers with Working Washington helped spark the $15 minimum wage movement, and we recently helped pass laws giving domestic workers basic rights and food and retail workers better scheduling. Throughout this past year, we've been organizing workers in the gig economy, discussing better and more transparent pay and access to benefits, when one of our worker leaders, Mia, who you'll hear from in a minute, let us know what was going on with the pay cuts on Instacart. And so we wanted to get involved, and we're honored to be your partners in this work. Although we have Washington in our name, this effort quickly became a national one because there's so much interest in organizing across the country, and we intend to keep a national focus with this project. It helps that there are lots of gig platforms and tech companies in Seattle. They're our neighbors, and we want to hold them accountable. We also see how much wealth they're generating, and we want to make sure there's attention on who it's going to and who it's not going to. So I want to thank you all for being here. It's incredibly powerful to see so many workers speak out. I think it might be a historic event. I'm not sure there's ever been an online organizing meeting with this many gig workers before. And like a specific shout out to Emily for the amazing work that she's done. You guys have sparked a national conversation about gig worker pay because you laid the groundwork by talking to each other and organizing for change. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Like Rachel was saying, it's been really legitimately inspiring to see the work that you guys have been doing. You guys are probably the most organized and outspoken group of workers that I've ever worked with. And the fact that you guys came together and spoke out for this stuff put so much pressure on Instacart that they were forced to actually change some of their policies because of you guys speaking out, which is pretty amazing. We're just really glad that we get to be a part of that, and hopefully that we can help figure out some next steps here tonight about what we can do to get some of the bigger things that we think you guys really need, and that all gig workers need, like better pay and transparency from the companies that you work for. So you guys have kind of created this moment that we can capture. You've created a national conversation about what pay looks like in the gig economy. It's a conversation that wasn't really happening before, and it's happening now because of Instacart workers. And you've created this moment of incredible power for workers. And I think we really need to make sure that we capitalize on that and that we create some long-term sustainable worker power. And I think that if we do that, we can fight for and even win something really, really huge. So for those of you who haven't been obsessively tracking Instacart news for the last month, like a few of us have, we want to recap a little bit of kind of what's been going on in the last month. And Mia, who has been a leader on Working Washington's gig economy campaign, is going to talk a little bit about what's happened so far.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you for those of you that are joining on this webinar. And I see you guys in New York. Hi, hi. My name is Mia Kelly, and I've been working as a full service shopper here in the Seattle zone for Instacart since early last March. My sister was the one who introduced me to Instacart. She's also a full service shopper in the Sacramento region. I'm a pastry chef by trade and was very happy to be introduced to another source of income that was very flexible to my schedule of baking. This job gave me the flexibility and freedom and a paycheck. I must admit, I really didn't pay attention to her demeanor when I mentioned that I was receiving only $7.80 as a base rate on good days for orders. I figured we were in different zones, so this was the status quo. Of course, areas would be different. I didn't realize that just 2 miles away across Lake Washington in the same King County, shoppers were only being paid $3.50 per order. I only picked that zone once. Like many of you, I was injured on the job. I had 4 cases of water and some other sundries and a cheesecake, and I took them up 4 flights of stairs with alley parking. The customers did not assist me except for the cheesecake. The 2 young college students took that, and one remarked boldly at me, "Why didn't you bring it out all up at once?" Yes, I did get a bad customer service remark on that day. I had injured my back lifting 48 pounds of water without aid, and I was out for a week. I was introduced to Emily and Working Washington when I replied to a Facebook post after that incident. I relayed that story of that day. Working Washington invited me to become a part of a panel of other gig workers that included Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Shipt. We spoke about the ins and outs of our work on a live feed. It was also recorded, so you can see that panel on YouTube. I will admit that I was hesitant at first, because at that point, I wasn't angry or disappointed with Instacart. I used this contention of "this is just business" to continue to Working Washington. I felt that maybe I could help change what's currently happening as a policy in my state. We all know that if you go to L&I or unemployment, that we're not afforded the same rights and benefits that other workers have just by being an employee. These companies can make changes so that we can all benefit. And this is one of the reasons why we're here. In September and the October months, I started to see that those that who have started the new pay structure voice their concerns on social media. I saw a reduction in my pay. I started to feel like that frog in the pot of boiling water. When November came, I found that I couldn't even accept the batch because I would lose money even by just doing work. Just like you now, I had to become choosy. I couldn't even do my favorites of double or triple customers on a single batch, especially since I was being paid for only one. After the open office meeting with the Instacart regional manager that took place at the Metropolitan Market, I met with other shoppers that were not so happy with the changes that were made. I saw that I wasn't the only one that had the decrease in pay, yet were expected to do the same work. I sent out a private message to them and to Working Washington in hopes that something could be done. I was hoping for a change, to get back that argument that I had with my husband that I could still continue to do this job as I continue to put more miles on our car and further depreciate our car. Working Washington was gracious enough to assist us shoppers to organize in our local area by formulating a list of demands for better pay, transparency of pay, which included for the items that we were shopping for, a breakdown of the batch, the full address, the full name on the batch, and also, most importantly, no more tip theft. We started our actions with stories in the press, social media, news, other national news. Our stories were covered in the New York Times, the CNN, NBC, BuzzFeed, and other outlets such as GeekWire, Fast Company, and NPR. Because of our actions, we have seen customers starting to tip us 22 cents in order to force Instacart to pay us, rather using their tips as base pay. We are seeing bills that are being introduced to state legislations that are calls for a clarification of independent contractor status, another one that will give us portable benefits, and other bills that are written in other states. We are seeing class action lawsuits in California and in New York. We were alerted to more and more shoppers around our nation whom we found were in the same boat as we are. We saw one shopper who received 80 cents in pay, and more shoppers showed that they too were receiving some standard pay. This isn't a local problem. We connected with other organizers who have been shopping for Instacart a lot longer than I have. People who Instacart have been stealing from time and time again. I now paid attention when my sister, another shopper, said we were once paid $18 for an order in my zone. Instacart repeatedly denied taking tips in the media, but shoppers were persistent in getting the message out and sharing evidence that proved what Instacart was doing. The fact that Instacart is agreeing to pay back pay without a lawsuit forcing them to do so is proof that us banding together is the right thing to do. This skirmish is a victory, but the war has not been won. We still have a lot more work to do, and I'm asking for your help. We need to have a voice. If we don't speak up, some corporate exec in California gets to make the rules for us all. Someone who's making a lot more money than I do and whom I have been making money for. Please, we need your help to make the changes that benefit us all. After all, this is just business. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you guys being here. Jansen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mia. So, like Mia was saying, you guys won a pretty big concession from Instacart. The fact that they agreed to, first of all, that they admitted that they were taking your tips because you guys were so outspoken about it, and that they agreed to stop doing it and to pay back pay is a huge, huge deal. But we also know that it doesn't get us what we really need. It doesn't get us that broader, more important demand of better pay and transparency overall. The reason it's important, though, is not just because of what it means for workers. It's because it has shown the world that Instacart workers have power. It's shown everyone that when you guys organize together, you can bring a $7 billion company to its knees and force them to do something that they don't want to do. Getting those changes from Instacart required a combination of a lot of different things. It required a huge level of worker mobilization. It required almost universal support from customers and from the public. And it also required a really extraordinary level of media attention. That's not going to be every single week from here on out. But the fact that Instacart responded to you guys in this way shows that you have a lot of power. These kinds of victories are not just an everyday thing. They are a really big deal. But that being said, we know that this isn't all of what we wanted or even half of what we wanted. And we've heard about a lot of concerns that workers have about what the pay is really going to look like moving forward. So there's a lot that they're doing that's still pretty problematic, and we need to keep an eye on what pay is really looking like for you guys. So Jansen's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Jansen, before you do that, I just want to interrupt. As a testament to all of your hard work and your power, we are honored to be joined this evening by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. The Congresswoman is our Seattle representative, but she's also a national leader in progressive issues, including workers' rights. And she wanted to just say a few words to you all and encourage you to continue the fight. Congresswoman, can you hear us?
My beloved Seattle people know this about me. I'm an organizer first and foremost. I'm also the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus here in Congress. We have 98 members. We are the largest values-based caucus, and we are standing behind and with you as we work on income inequality. And what you have done and what you've already achieved around income inequality and specifically around the tech industry is really just phenomenal. Workers did this. Workers are powerful. This is how movements get built. And people are paying attention to you, and it's about time. And we know that workers should get paid enough to support themselves, and that customers should know where their money is going. And really, at the core, we shouldn't have to give up the basics just to get the good stuff about flexibility and convenience. Technology is supposed to be lifting all of us up, and it can, but it needs organizing. It needs your voices to make sure that we continue to make sure that this economy works for all of us. We know that money and power are concentrated in CEOs and investors, and that before you all organized, before you lifted your voices, nobody was listening to workers. But you have changed that. And I just want to say that I'm the reason I was late is because I'm in a Judiciary Committee hearing, and we were debating the background checks bill, basically to make sure that we have sensible reform, gun reform legislation that 90% of Americans support. And because we have a majority in the House, because people organized and turned out, we have had the first gun reform hearing and passed the first gun reform legislation ever. It's the first hearing in 8 years. It's the first bill that we've passed. And I just want you to know that everything that you do, it may seem small sometimes, it may seem big, it may even seem like you're taking steps backwards. But when you look at what you really accomplished with Instacart announcing a change to their pay structure and back pay for workers whose tips were used to subsidize their pay, when you look at the organizing infrastructure that you are setting up, and I want to especially thank Working Washington for my home state, my district, for the work that you have done in leading this national conversation, you cannot help but be absolutely inspired. And so thank you so much to the workers who have made this happen. Thank you to all of you for using your power to organize, to stand strong, to bring voices to the forefront that need to be at the front, and for making sure that we address equity in this country. So appreciate it, and we're with you all the way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Congressmember Jayapal. It was amazing to hear from you. And like she said, organizing and speaking out really does work. It really does make a difference, and that's the work that you guys are doing. So getting back to this issue of, we have won something here, but we have a lot left to win. Jansen is going to talk a little bit now about what we've heard about people's concerns about how Instacart is paying now and how it might pay in the future. So go for it, Jansen.
Hello, my name is Jansen, and I've been with Instacart for 8 months now, and I work in the Seattle area. Instacart, we all know Instacart is pretty good at saying things that people want to hear, but doesn't really change the real issues. I think 2 years ago they said they need to improve relationship with the shoppers, and it's a core focus of the company, but we all know that didn't happen. Specific concerns that we've seen are potential glitch. This shouldn't be used to subsidize the batch, or it should not be reduced or increased due to replacement or refunds. And another one is double, triple batches being paid as one. I think in the old pay structure, like in a Costco order, we get paid for every order if it's a multiple orders. And then I think like what everybody wants is need more transparency. We need to know what the batch, how the batch is calculated, and like for bulk orders, we need we should get paid more. And what else? If you guys have any concerns, please feel free to share it in the chat. And I'm gonna pass it to Sarah. She's an Instacart worker from Mountain View. She's been a leader in the effort to hold them accountable for 3 years. She will talk more about that.
Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. Okay. Oh, I hear a beeping. Okay. So I'm sure some of you know me. I recognize some of the names in the chat. Hi, I've been a worker for 3 years. I've been, I guess, one of the louder voices. Matthew, Vanessa, and I have been fighting whenever there's a pay cut, which I think this is now like the third pay cut. So last week was a really great week, but I'm sure you saw that a lot of the newer shoppers were excited and they're like, yeah, see, Instacart's apologizing. They're going to really hook us up. And the veterans were like, okay, what's the catch? Because there's always a catch. Every time they give us something, they always take something away. There's always a catch. So we know that next week, we're not going to see a real change. Like people are probably going to see even less earnings. So one of the catches that we figured out is they're now giving us double, triple the batch, which Jensen just talked about a little bit, but they're now giving us extra batches for the same pay. Larger orders are going to be shit. Like we know this. We know that it's not a real, we need more basically. We still need significant transparency and we need more money. We need better pay. So those are going to be the two things that we're focusing on. Matthew, Vanessa, and I, like, we kind of taken a leadership role in the past, but our efforts are like a little misguided, like a little disorganized. Working Washington knows exactly what they're doing. They have the expertise. They have the means to really take us to the next level. So that's what we're doing now. They have a plan, and our plans in the past have been kind of like short term, like super gratifying short term, and theirs are going to be more long term. But we feel really good about it. We're still going to be working very closely with them. And we really, really, really want everyone to be contributing and doing their part still. Okay, I just wanted to make sure my thing was on because I was hearing beeps. But so yes, so we're still a huge part of this. We still want you guys to be a huge part of this. I think a thing to remember is that like Matthew, Vanessa, and I, like, we're no smarter than you. The only thing that we did was we were just super persistent, and we just, every single thing that we have, every news article, every person that was helping us, none of that was luck. Every single thing that we've had thus far is because someone reached out to them and someone was persistent, and that's all it is. All of us have the ability to get our voices heard, and right now it's more important than ever. So I'm really just hoping everyone, you know, stays united and keeps fighting. I know that we had a lot of press in the past month, and it comes in waves. Like next month, we're probably not going to get a lot of press, but we still have to keep fighting on, and we can't feel hopeless. Like Instacart wants us to be quiet and feel hopeless. We cannot do that right now. So Matthew's going to talk more about like how everyone can help out. Sage from Working Washington is going to talk. And we really want to start uniting all the gig workers because we feel like we all, like the more there are, the stronger we are. And we all have like the same basic issues of like, we're getting shorthanded with our pay. So I'm going to hand this over to Matthew, but thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Well, let's see here. Hey guys, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Matt here. Heard a lot about me, a lot from me, more likely. I got 3 different ways to go with this. Professional. I have a Eminem kind of freestyle rap battle against the poor of a meta, but it's not polished yet, so we're not going to use that one. I'll just start with this one, and we'll just kind of talk a little bit about what our next steps are. You've heard a lot about them. It's good to have a lot of you here. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you for joining. This movement's far from over. As everyone prior to me said, they have their stories. We all know how this job goes. I'm here sitting in the parking lot right now. We spend what, now that we're dodging batches, 60 to 80% of our time in spots just like this. So I figured what better place to talk to you all. First off, Hillary, thank you for your concern. Even if I am deactivated for speaking up, I'm not gonna leave the fight. I don't think it's possible at this point until they change, they all change, or they go away. I've said it before and I'll say it again. But kind of what we're reading through the chat right now. Sorry, brain goes everywhere. You guys know that. So what I want to talk about was the 3 things that we want, the 3 things that we asked for. We want Instacart to stop stealing our tips. We want them to pay us a fair living wage for our efforts, and we especially want transparency on how we're being paid. You know, this addresses almost all the issues you guys are putting in the chat right now. And so we hear you. Any issue that's happening to you has happened to me, Sarah, Vanessa, any of the other people that are working closely with us. And especially me, I comment on everything in an 11,000 person group. I hear you. Even if it's not an issue I've had, I try and message that as much as possible to the public. But you know what? we got none of those things. They want us to say 1.5. We didn't get any of them. We've seen the data coming in this week. We've seen the data coming in since that announcement that they were going to give us our tips back and all these things. But people who have worked for Instacart since 2015, 2016 know that whenever they solve a problem, they create a new one. So the problem that we're keeping our eye on is the fact that they're going to now be bundling 2 and 3 batches for $1, $7 to $10 payment, or just continue to do all delivery only for $5, while continuing to condition customers to pay us $2 for a tip. 5% is not enough. I agree with everyone. I wouldn't even settle for a 10%. I'd like 15 because that's what's fair. We bust our asses, we sweat, we hurt ourselves. That's what's fair. What we cannot afford right now, guys, is getting into the weeds. And that's what I see a lot of us doing. We can look at the weeds. We can see the weeds. We can be pissed that Brenda up in Syracuse isn't shoveling her porch and tipping $5. Like these are issues that are important, but these are not issues that the press cares about. So the things that we're going to be focusing on right now is getting higher pay and transparency and finding a way to easily convey that to the masses, the public, the customers, journalists. Just today, Fast Company released an article talking about the 22-cent tip. That gets us around the tip theft, because even though they said they're not going to steal tips, we know they are. So moving forward, we want to just keep a vision, keep on track, and trust in us that we hear you, we know what's going on, and that Instacart is going to continue to behave abhorrently towards people that they consider not worth a living wage. If you're following tech culture right now, any one engineer in Silicon Valley would tell us, griping about low pay and potentially losing our jobs, they would tell us to learn to code. That's unacceptable, and it's a disgusting rebuttal to our argument. We built the company. Some of us don't have the luxury of learning to code, so you pay us now because we are the ones that made your company worth $8 billion. And if you don't treat us right, we are going to take it from you. So now we need to focus on getting the message of higher pay and transparency out. A lot of you guys work in different apps. We're connecting right now with the DoorDash drivers. We're going to hopefully reach out to the Grubhub drivers, the Amazon drivers, and we all have to stand behind each other as one. So if we can all message the same thing, we know we have differences, but the main point is higher pay and transparency. None of this algorithm stuff. It's just not working, and it's proven by 70,000 shoppers saying no. So just keep messaging that. Thank you to Congressman Jayapal for coming. Thank you to Ro Khanna and even Tucker Carlson for helping us out. Arizona sounds like it's dead right now as a Republican state because it's stealing from customers. It's a bipartisan issue. This is a political issue. I saw that comment in there. The only thing that's going to help us is customers and laws. They will not change just because we're yelling. We need to get everyone on our side, and anyone knows that stealing's bad. And once they know what we do and how we're getting taken advantage of, I think we have a really, really big chance of winning. So, moving forward with that, connecting with other apps, I'm going to pass the next part off. We're going to be going to, I believe, Kristen.
Did you want to talk a little bit about the need to keep track of how much people are getting paid?
Yes, actually just pulled it up right now. Before I pass it off to Kristen, the people at Working Washington have actually made 2 things that we've actually seen before. If you're familiar with Dumpling My Gig, those people over there, they want, and I fully back this, to track our pay. Right now, the veteran people that are quick at math, we're able to quickly import the numbers Instacart's offering us for like $10 badges and see that it's just not adequate enough, not worth a living hourly wage. So what they've done is they've come up with a calculator that we're going to be putting in all the groups and on Twitter. So if you guys can help us and follow the instructions as close as you can, so we can get the actual data to the people that can make this issue known. So we're going to have something that's going to be our offer calculator. It's going to show how much we're making per hour. And then we're going to have a campaign called basically Check Your Checks. That's going to let us know basically how much we're making, and if that's sufficient enough for a world that realistically demands $22 an hour for any job. But right now we are going to be messaging minimum $15 an hour, as that's the national standard right now set forth by Seattle. So having said that, keep on the lookout for these trackers and things that we're going to be posting in the groups, and just help us help each other. That's what it's all about. So I'm going to pass that the rest of us over to Kristen, and she'll explain more about that. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
All right. Hi, everybody. So sorry, I'm just looking at the poll results. Oh my gosh, I just want to say we are looking at the chat and it's blowing up. I wish I could answer a lot of these things. So really where I'm leading into with this is how important it is to reach out to others. I've been a full-time Instacart worker for almost a year now, guys. So this is my bread and butter. This is how I make my living. It's obvious what they're doing. We all know this. But the thing about it is before I went to Instacart, I did what a lot of you do or still do because we all got to make our hustle. And I worked on other apps. I started with Uber Eats and I kind of hated it. But at the same time, I applied to be a Dasher. And what we all know now about DoorDash, and the reason why I wouldn't even activate my card was because they were going to use my tips to pay me. And I thought that was just straight up wrong, which we all know it is wrong. The only difference with them is they're upfront about it, but only to the people that do it for a living. The customers don't actually know that. It's much the same as what Instacart just decided to do, except they weren't transparent about it at all. I actually signed up for Flex at one point too. I've never done it, but it was an option that I signed up for actually when the pay structure tanked because I knew that what I was making was not going to be enough. And then I found out with the fresh deliveries, it's pretty much the same thing too. So the thing about that to realize is that, we all work multiple platforms. And so we all know that there are serious pay issues on all of them. There's tip theft, which we know now is a widespread issue. And the pay is just too low. For what we put on our cars mileage wise and all the other expenses, it should be reflected. And I think for us, we're an example right now. We have the ability to impact other people that work other gig apps. But if you work another gig app, we want to know that too, just because it's kind of interesting to find out if what your take is. So there's a poll coming up right now. If you work on any other sort of platforms, to go ahead and fill that out. I would be surprised, to see very few of us don't work another one because, money is money and it's hard to do. The thing about that being said is we also, on top of the check your checks and the pay calculator, I know it's a lot of stuff. We have a tool that we want to use to track literally the shady things that are happening to us in real time, because we know, like we said, the issue about the base pay being $10 and then all of a sudden starting to get doubles and triples like there's no tomorrow. Just weird things. But they're going to manipulate our pay again. They're going to basically do the same thing they were doing before, just in a different form. So we want to try and keep track of that. So the Shady App Watcher is what we're calling it. It's a tool that we have. So you can all report what your pay is like and ways that they're manipulating your pay. Instacart right here is really kind of indicative of a much bigger problem. A lot of businesses are just generally transitioning away from employees and to independent contractors. And it's not just us, it's other industries, even people that are like, that are highly educated or have certificates. And so, those people also are part of it. And that's like way down the line, but this is a much bigger issue. It's happening across all the other platforms. And if you think about what we put together just by, telling people, it would be so much more powerful if we could get everybody that's being mistreated across those platforms. And I can tell you, up until Mia, who was the one who recruited me to work with Working Washington, and I actually had the honor of testifying before the legislature in support of like something to support us. And that wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't have been for another worker who brought me in. So, to me, this is like my invitation to you. You might have felt like your voice wasn't being heard, but it is. Somebody is listening. And if you want to step up and really, fight for it, somebody's going to see that and they're going to join you, because what we're doing isn't wrong. We're definitely standing up for what's right here. So when people see us come together on other apps, they want to get involved, and they felt and feel probably just as helpless as a lot of us did. I know that just being here right now tonight is really empowering for most of us. And we can keep this going. I mean, we're going to do something really amazing here. I don't think Instacart is just going to give us anything. I think we're going to have to fight tooth and nail for it. But, that's kind of my roundabout way of getting back to the Shady App Watcher. So make sure that you're, going to get to the Shady App Watcher. We're going to share the link with you so you can start sending it to other gig workers and talk to them about the idea of bringing us all together. And then pretty much that's my piece here. Sage is going to talk about what we can do when we actually fight together for real change and what it really means for us.
Hello. So we've heard some really great plans here on how we're going to hold Instacart accountable. Including a lot of people who are on this call who work for multiple apps. I saw that poll go through. Like learn from the example of what we've all done here, which is that workers are really powerful. And for all the talk about that we've all been hearing about the gig economy the past few years, it's almost always just been about investors and CEOs and some billions of dollars of rounds of something or other. And but that all really changed the past few weeks. I know Congresswoman Jayapal said this, Emily said this, Rachel said this, but it's true. I'm going to say it again anyway, which is that together you have entirely changed the conversation about the gig economy. And you did that by refocusing the conversation on the people who are actually doing the work. And it reminds me a lot about a different campaign that we worked on at Working Washington a few years ago, which was the Fight for 15. And it's hard to remember before the $15 minimum wage was a thing in some ways as a topic of conversation, but before that happened, before fast food workers in particular and airport workers led the way and took action on minimum wage, the only McDonald's employees you would hear from or see from were actors on TV who were pretending to be McDonald's workers in commercials, and you could tell that because they were usually singing and dancing, which doesn't happen quite as often at the food and retail jobs that I've had. But when workers took action, that changed. And suddenly workers speaking out meant that fast food workers were on TV talking about their lives. And that really changed everything just by changing that conversation. And within a year from the first fast food strike in Seattle, in fact, a year to the day, the city of Seattle passed a $15 minimum wage. Congresswoman Jayapal was part of that fight. So she's been here with us for a bit. And a bunch of other cities have followed and states as well. And there's obviously still plenty of work to do on wages and labor standards for people in conventional employment, but workers taking action set a baseline for decent pay, and the country responded. And politicians then followed and made laws that made it all happen. And I really think that that's the kind of moment we have right here, right now. Instacart workers, you all on this call have seized the conversation about the new economy. The power is really in the hands of the people here right now. And you did just win some major changes from a $7 billion corporation. And that is not a small thing, but we also know that it takes more than a medium post from a CEO to have accountability. We know, as we've been talking about here, as Matthew and Jansen have been talking about in particular, that they're going to keep making changes, and we need to make sure that we have a way of holding them accountable to the principle that the people doing the work should be paid for doing the work. DoorDash doesn't get that either. They think $1 is okay. Instacart hasn't gotten it before. We're going to figure that out. And in the end, I think the way to do that is about winning new laws that secure basic rights and benefits for gig workers. And I know it can sort of sound a little bit crazy to be on a Zoom meeting saying we're going to get a law. It sounds a little bit loopy. I think the fast food strike and the Fight for 15 are an example of how this stuff can really happen when we change the conversation. Because we really do have an opportunity here to harness the power that we've gotten by advancing some sharp, clear campaign goals that make sure the companies can't keep playing games, that unite workers and customers across a ton of different apps, and that would deliver what workers really want and need in the end. And the measure about whether these things I'm about to say are right is whether or not gig workers really do unite behind them, of course, but we'll be back to find that out. So we think that there's 3 key demands that accomplish these goals. The first one is setting a pay floor of $15 an hour plus expenses for gig workers. The second thing is tips on top. And the third one is a transparency, a detailed breakdown of pay. And I'm going to go into these each in a little bit more detail now, but not too much detail. So first one, $15 an hour plus expenses. So there's a lot of specific issues as we've all been talking about how Instacart pays and the kinds of changes they might make with the double batches and the triple batches and stuff like that to try to get around their basic responsibility to pay people enough who do the work. And there's also a bottom line like a basic way to measure how they're doing overall that like anyone can understand, any app, customers, workers, or how many months or years you've done, how many batches you've done. And that's how much you're getting paid for your time after expenses. So we think that should be making, at the very least, $15 an hour for their time on active jobs. A contractor, that's after expenses like mileage and taxes. You know, contractor or employee status shouldn't matter. And setting aside again for a moment the important details about things like pay per item and pay per order, no matter how the pay works, that ought to be a bottom line that they can't go below. Again, the details matter, they matter a lot, but we also need a baseline that can apply to all apps. $15 an hour for your time on active jobs plus expenses. All of these companies can do better. They should do better. They should pay per item. They should pay for the work that's being done, but there's no excuse for doing worse. So the second thing is tips on top. So this seems like this ought to be pretty basic, and as Matthew pointed out, even Tucker Carlson agrees this is pretty basic. A tip is a tip. It's an extra. It's on top. When a customer adds a tip, they're doing it because they want to give a little extra to the people doing the work. And there is nobody who wants to be tipping a $7 billion corporation. Even a $5 billion corporation still don't want to do it. So let's make that real. We need a clear and sharp legal definition that tips are on top of pay. Tips are supposed to be a supplement, not a substitute. It's pretty basic. And again, we've seen the past couple of weeks just how almost universal the agreement is on this score, with the exception of the people who are writing the code in Seattle and in Silicon Valley. So let's change that. And the third thing is the basic transparency item, a detailed breakdown of pay. I think workers deserve to know why they're being paid, what they're being paid. Just like employees get a pay stub, gig workers deserve a detailed breakdown that shows the basic details of the work they're doing. How long it took, how many miles, what you're paid, what the tip was, and what units of work were involved. So items shopped on Instacart, for example. And this is a basic way to ensure real transparency for Instacart workers and people on all different apps. It gives us a way to check their work. So those are the three basic pieces. $15 an hour plus expenses as a floor for gig workers. Tips on top of that, and then a detailed breakdown of pay so we can know that they're doing it right or not. And here's the beautiful thing about these three things. Each of them alone makes a difference to get $15 plus expenses. It makes a difference for tips to be on top of wages like you just won. And it makes a huge difference to have more transparency. And it's even more powerful to have all those things together. Even better, we can make this happen at all different levels. We can demand it directly from companies like we've done and we're continuing to do. We can also create real outside accountability for these companies by passing laws that do these things. And we can do that at the city level, the state level, and even someday at the federal level. These three pieces also connect people across different apps. DoorDash, for example, might not pay by item ordered right now, but they can certainly set a floor of at least $15 an hour with an active job. Shipt might pay in a totally different way too. Some of you probably know exactly how they pay. But they can set a $15 an hour baseline also. And so the way these three demands address our needs and connect people, that's where the power comes from. And you know, again, right now people are looking for ways forward where we can have the good things about the gig economy, the convenience and the flexibility for workers and customers alike, while also making sure that the CEOs and the venture capitalists don't get all the money. So we have a unique moment right here. For a change, finally, people are listening to gig workers, not just CEOs, and you all made that happen. So I say let's keep that going by going big. We can keep holding Instacart accountable. We can reach out to people who work on other apps, and we can lay out a blueprint for laws to reboot the gig economy so it works for the people doing the work. And we don't have to just rely on their promises anymore. There's work to be done to get there for sure. But right now, reporters and lawmakers and lawyers want to hear from you for a change. There's a lot of people who really do want to know how to fix what's broken here. So let's go big and tell them and get them to work on new laws that will deliver what we need. First step is to fill out this poll on what you think about these 3 demands as a way to unite gig workers and push for real change and real accountability. And now I'm going to pass it off to Vanessa.
Hi, folks. Thank you for being here. I am outside. I am outside of Starbucks, so it might get a little bit noisy, but I'm going to try and speak concisely and loudly so that everybody can hear me. So I want to just kind of like say thank you guys for coming here. I am completely and totally fucking floored, and I also have a potty mouth, I'm sorry, but I'm totally floored that we got this many people to attend a webinar of this size. Like, it's just still blowing my mind, and thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're nothing without you guys, and like so much support, so much solidarity. Thank you. So I just kind of wanted to sort of like touch upon ideas that everybody else has talked about already. The first being that I want to reinforce those like 3 unifying demands of minimum $15 per hour pay plus expenses. We're implementing tools like the pay calculator that Matthew touched upon earlier, and I think maybe Sage spoke about it a little bit as well, to help you get a better idea of what you're actually making, and that'll be rolling out in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that. But that being a bare minimum, $15, nobody should be making under that, right? Tips, 100% are property, not inclusive in any kind of batch incentive, obviously. And then the third point, which I'm going to probably end up rambling on about for quite a few minutes, is outside accountability and transparency. Essentially, when Sarah, Matthew, and I started doing this years ago, we didn't have any infrastructure. We had no formal way of like pushing back against things that we perceived to be like wage cuts and unfair, and we kind of had to build something organically, and you guys have been a huge part of that, and it's been fucking phenomenal, and labor thugs till we die. You guys are awesome. But I also wanted to kind of touch upon the idea that like we can pressure them, and we can pressure them economically, and we can pressure them by refusing batches, and we can pressure them by continuing to go to the media, and all of those actions need to continue. But also there's a third way of pressuring them, which is outside accountability, and it speaks to transparency, and that is like legislatively, right? We need to have cross-platform organizing. Like, it is a necessity. Obviously our intentions have been like pretty honed in on Instacart, but Instacart didn't invent the idea of using your tips as pay, right? Like, Amazon's been doing that, DoorDash has been doing it, and they've been getting away with it for a long time. Instacart simply borrowed from a shitty pay structure that robs workers and found that it was palatable enough to implement themselves. And thank you to you guys for pushing back, and thank you to Working Washington for putting them on blast on a national level. And because of that, we are no longer going to have tips factored into our pay, which is a huge victory, but it's just a single victory, and we need to continue to march on. Essentially, sorry, I have like a whole outline because I'm trying not to like leave anything out, but essentially, you know, like, we can't rely on just a piecemeal of like pressure here and pressure there and maybe a class action lawsuit here. Like, things do move that way, but you know, we've seen what the result of our previous class action lawsuit was, and it was in large part this new pay structure, which actually fucked us a lot more. And so a few $1 million is nothing in Instacart's perspective, right? Like, that's like pennies to me, you know, a few million to $1 billion or $7 billion company. So what I wanted to say is that, yes, we need to approach this like from the perspective of organizing, we need to approach it from a legal perspective as well. And unfortunately, one of the things that we find is that gig apps tend to borrow from each other, right? And it's a disgusting race to the bottom at this point. Everybody is competing to pay their workers the least amount possible. And because they're doing that, we need to do that as well. We need to integrate labor and ideas from other platforms, because what we may not have today and another platform has already may be implemented tomorrow, and we need to really be stronger by organizing together, right? And essentially, sorry, I'm continuing to scroll down, so I apologize for looking down. We are going to be doing Instacart specific things. Obviously, we are implementing a check your check process to submit real data about our pay, not Instacart provided data. As we all know, that is not accurate, it's not reliable, it's skewed. And so we're gonna be collecting our own data, but that's only gonna work if you guys actually come through. And I know you will, but I just wanna throw that out there. You guys have to also come through with data on your end so that we can get a better estimate of like what our wages really look like, right? Also, there's going to be that shady app watcher app or interface, I guess. And I highly encourage you guys to use that. A lot of us work on other platforms, and even if we don't, we know people that do. So submitting information on behalf of other gigs as well is going to help Working Washington to collect more meaningful information. And essentially, we want to make sure that the momentum that we have right now is going to continue. And the best way of doing that is by continuing to organize, not reveling too much in victories that we feel like are progressive, because there's always so much more to do. Obviously, like, we should celebrate and we should be grateful for the things that we've been able to the concessions we've been able to earn from Instacart, because we know they didn't give them to us, right, willingly. Like, we fought for that. And essentially, sort of like a unifying name for our campaign moving forward, we're suggesting pay up. We're open to the idea of other suggestions. I highly encourage you to give feedback in the chat, or you can reach out to us, obviously. And yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, being engaged, which you guys obviously are, you guys are here. I'm still stoked about that. I'm going to say it for the third time. I'm sorry. But continuing with the engagement, you guys are fantastic. The momentum will not stop as long as we continue to do the things that we're doing. And it might feel like, you know, last week was like this huge victorious thing for us, and it felt really fucking good, right? But there are gonna be weeks moving forward where it's gonna feel like nobody's listening, or there's a slump in the media coverage. There's not always going to be like a coverable happening, right? We're not always going to have like something to rally around other than the idea that we're all committed and we're all going to continue to organize until we get fair pay, transparency, and a living wage. Like, we need it. And so I think that that is the gist of what I wanted to speak to. Continue with the work that you guys are doing. We're fucking just blown away. I'm impressed. And I'm gonna hand it over to Emily briefly, and then I'll say adios to you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I think that's so true, what you said, that we really do need to continue coming together. We need to continue organizing, and we really need to reach out to workers and other apps to make these really bold demands that it seems like a lot of you stand behind. I want to clarify one question that I saw in the chat that was coming up about the $15 an hour. Our thinking on that is that it would be $15 an hour for time that you spend with an active job. So that would include basically from the time that you accept the job until the time that you drop off with the customer. So all the time that you spend working on a specific job. And there were also a lot of other questions about details of like, how would expenses be included in that amount and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is stuff that we're going to need to like talk through with you guys as we move forward with trying to make this into more of a specific policy. So this is kind of like the broad idea. This is like the messaging that we would put out on it. And there's like a lot of details that will have to be worked out as we figure out how do you go about pushing for some kind of pay floor for independent contractors. But you guys are bringing up a lot of great questions about it. And I'm excited to see that those demands are things that seem to make sense to a lot of you and that we can all stand behind. That's really cool to see. So I think along those lines, you know, the most important thing about the work that we're doing right now is that you guys are leading the way on it. Workers have been leading the way on this issue since the beginning. If it wasn't for the Mia and the other leaders in Washington who brought this issue to our attention and started organizing around it, we wouldn't be involved in this. And if it wasn't for Sarah and Matthew and Vanessa, who really laid the groundwork and created a national network of Instacart shoppers who are willing to organize with each other, it wouldn't have been possible to do what we did in the last month. The fact that you guys are doing this is why this work has been successful so far, and it's also why it will continue to be successful. You know, our role as an organization and my role as an organizer is really just to bring people together and to lend support and to help with coordinating. But it's you guys who are going to be leading the way, and you guys who are going to be calling the shots and who are going to be the reason that these big changes can happen. And by that, I mean that it very literally cannot happen without you. It's not something that we can do as an organization. It's not something that a few people can do on their own. It's something that is only going to happen if we create a long-term group of workers who are banding together to say, enough is enough. These companies need to pay us decent wages, and they need to make it clear why we're getting paid what we're getting paid. Oh, and yeah, they probably shouldn't steal our tips either, right? So this is going to be really hard work moving forward. But the reason that it's going to be hard is because we're doing something really, really unprecedented. This is not something that we've seen happen before. Having gig workers speak out in a large group like this and win a concession within a few weeks is really incredible. And trying to do this work of dealing with workers' rights in the gig economy is a big deal. It's a problem that people haven't been able to work out for a long time. And you guys have created an extraordinary moment of possibility to work on that problem and to fight for some real change. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the gig economy for the last decade or so, but I think in the last 3 weeks, people have heard more from actual gig workers about this stuff than we had in the last 3 years. And that's because of all of the work that you guys have been doing, talking to media, speaking out, talking to customers. And because of the work that you guys have done, the public has finally started hearing what you have to say instead of what CEOs have to say, which is really cool. And I think we need a lot more weeks like that. You know, I think that fighting for the rights of independent contractors and for people in the gig economy is new and it's complicated, but you guys have shown that you know how to organize effectively. And you've already shaped the national conversation about pay in the gig economy in a very, very real way. And I really believe that if we keep up the momentum here, we have a chance to do something huge together. And it's something that could change not just Instacart and not even just the gig economy, but literally the future of workers' rights, which is pretty amazing. So like I was saying, our job as Working Washington is to listen and to learn and to support you guys in organizing, just like we responded to Mia when she originally brought this issue to our attention. So we're going to be sending out a follow-up to all of you with a recap of this meeting and an invitation to the next meeting. And we'll also send out all the tools that we've talked about during this meeting. So we'll send you the calculator to figure out how much you're really getting paid. We'll send you the check your checks to submit data on what your pay is like so we can keep track of what Instacart is really doing here. We will send you the Shady App Watcher so that you can reach out to workers on other apps. And we'll make sure that you guys are able to get the word out on this and bring even more workers into this campaign, which is, I think, going to create the momentum that we need to win a really, really huge change. I also want to say, you know, we want to hear from all of you. There have been 600 of you on this call. And I've been trying to keep up with the chat. I'm going to read it afterwards. But if you have ideas or concerns or strategies that you want to talk through, I would love to hear them. And you can just email gig@workingwa.org. That's GIG@workingwa.org. And we'll be looking out for your emails and we'll be listening. So it was so great to connect with you all here, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Vanessa.
Thank you, Emily. So I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things, and then we're going to wrap up. But one, I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for attending. I wanted to say thank you to Working Washington for putting this together, because Sarah, Matthew, and I have no infrastructure and no know-how when it comes to webinars. So thank you guys so much for lending us your expertise, your platform, your organization. Like, all of that is, it's huge to us. It means a lot. The chat I was supposed to be moderating, I have to apologize and say I literally could not keep up with the momentum. So, like, power to you guys. We will go through. I do plan on, like, rereading everybody's comments and getting feedback, just not in real time. But yeah, we want to respond to that as well. So the other thing that I want to just emphasize really quickly before we wrap it up is screenshot everything. I know people have said this over and over again, but I'm going to say it because it's this important. Screenshot everything. Also, submit those screenshots. Submit your pay. Use these tools because they're only as valuable as, you know, people like actually utilizing them, right? And Working Washington has put together like a lot for us, and we want to utilize it, obviously, and make it meaningful and make it worth their time. And the other last closing note that I want to leave on is just boycott shit batches. Don't fucking take it. We're gonna see a lot more of them in the next several weeks as the new pay structure rolls out. We're gonna get a lot of doubles, a lot of triples that are simply not worth your time. And keep up the fight, okay? You guys are fucking amazing. I love you. And solidarity forever. Thank you.